5 days in a row of gloom and doom, rain and thunderstorms. And this is the last of it because we are going to see improving weather conditions moving into the Northeast and Mid Atlantic states. Can you imagine as nice dry air comes in from the west and it's relatively mild air before the next cold front arrives with a new cool air mass in time for the weekend? And we have a couple of things going on in the tropics that are worth mentioning. All of that is coming up next on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. The best prices in town. 631-756-1125 is the telephone number. If this were winter, you'd need rock salt, and they are Long Island's largest supplier of rock salt. Tons and tons of mulch in case you want to make your lawn look good for the fall. And of course, remember, make sure your home is and you are protected in case of adverse weather. Make sure you got your supply of batteries, a working generator, a sump pump, or whatever else you need. Again, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello, hello. I want to just start off the night by saying, 2 nights ago, and Joe, as I've said many times, SPC, WPC, NHC, the CCP, the the Chinese Communist Party, they watch this show religiously, and of course, as soon as they heard that you mentioned thunderstorms, SPC just had to mention them. And actually, there was quite a show of thunderstorms this afternoon on Long Island, and last night in Long Island, and I also think elsewhere in parts of the middle and upper Hudson Valley for sure. I don't know if you got into a thunderstorm
or
two.
we got into it, and in fact, I got a message on Facebook from somebody who was inquiring about what he was hearing. Let me just quickly, I'll read this to you, this message that I got a little while ago. Oh, yeah, here we go. It said, hey, Mr. Rayo, this is from Jay McMahon, no relation to Ed. Hey, Mr. Rayo, haven't seen anything from you in a while. I am sorry to say, question for you. In Yorktown last night, there was a very strange rumble that was probably thunder, but it sounded strange, but it was a very strange sounding thunder. It sounded more like an explosion than thunder, and it occurred around 1:45 a.m. to 2 o'clock a.m., and people as far as Connecticut said they heard it. I have heard of rolling thunder, but not sure it was that. Any ideas? Stay safe. And I wrote back, I said, well, it was thunder. A few low-top thunderstorms developed in and around the lower Hudson Valley between 1 and 2 a.m., and incidentally, Joe, he said he misses seeing my forecast. I said, you can see my forecast nightly at 7:35 p.m. on YouTube on Joe Cioffi's YouTube channel, the famous, or maybe I should say infamous, Joe and Joe Weather Show, where so many of you are tuned in as I speak to you this very moment.
Well, at least the last couple of nights that's been the case, certainly. We've got our regulars on the chat board, a few others that have crawled out of hiding, like Billy the Kid, who we haven't seen. I was wondering what happened to Billy the Kid, but he's back, and of course Tom Contino is on the board as well. We all know Dear Tom. He's just really great at comprehended what it means not to post political stuff on the board. So welcome to everyone here tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, and welcome to any new viewers. We invite you to join the conversation on the chat board and subscribe to my YouTube channel with your Gmail account. This way you get notifications about when the Joe and Joe Weather Show is on. And we're on 5 days a week, Monday through Thursday at 7:35, Sundays at 11 a.m., and we even show up on Fridays and Saturdays every once in a while in case there's a storm running around. So, and we don't have one running around this Friday and Saturday, so that'll be good because then we can have a couple of days off. I know everybody was complaining, Mr. Rayo. I've seen my fair share of complaints about the fact that we had 5 days in a row, 5 days in a row of rain. Here's a fun fact. From January 20, I got this on Twitter, and I think it was Space Specialist who uh, pointed it out to me. But I believe from September 25th through October, I think through yesterday, the average temperature in New York, it's been that 8 day period or 9 day period, whatever it is the eighth coldest on record, believe it or not. So it has indeed been exceptionally cool. And listen, when you get an onshore flow and a low set up to the south like that, a nice big high to the north, and a little bit of cool Canadian air in the mix, not a big shocker that we've it's finally today. A few places got up into the 60s for the first time since last Friday. So it's been a cool stretch. And also, if you're going to have a drought being broken, this is the way to break it, because I did not see a single flash flood warning go up in any time in the last 5 days. Some places got substantial amounts of rain. The ground was able to absorb it all. It was a nice soaking rain spread out over a long period of time. And I think when we pull up the drought maps, which if they're not updated today, they'll be updated, I think, tomorrow, we may see that a number of areas that were being indicated as severe drought or moderate drought may have come down a notch or two. So
I think we have to wait until tomorrow for the update.
Okay, but I think this rainfall was the best. If you're going to get a ton of rain, spread it out over 5 days and let it be able to soak into the ground. And I think it was perfect.
Yes, indeed. Again, as you pointed out, no flood warnings, no flash flood warnings or flood warnings, or we have had coastal flood warnings, but that's something totally different. That's something that is dealing with that persistent onshore flow, which we've had, and that has led to higher than normal levels of water along coastlines like New Jersey and south shore of Long Island. But in terms of flood, let's say on the roadways, nothing of the sort. We've had a nice even distribution of rainfall over these many days. And you're right, Joe, this is exactly what the doctor ordered to help alleviate a long-term drought situation.
So I have looped the northeast satellite so that with the lightning strikes, and we can actually see from earlier today the thunderstorms, excuse me, that moved on through, and we're going to bring it up on the screen for you right now, and I'm going to go disappear for a little while. But you can see they formed out in the ocean and moved back southwestward, going back over Long Island. And you see it starts off with those flashes, and then there's another bunch that is just over Cape Cod at the moment. So there's still a little bit more work to do, but also, because hope springs eternal, if you look at the northern edge of the cloud line before it goes to the infrared, you can see that those clouds are deteriorating, and you're starting to get some drier air getting involved. And then there's the low center, which is so well defined here on the loop, is finally starting to move to the east. And we've been waiting for this. It's been basically rotating around within about a 50-mile circle, and that's been it. And now we finally have it getting kicked out to the northeast. It's moving slowly, but it'll probably accelerate a bit overnight and tomorrow. And we're going to get into some of that dry air that you see in upstate New York and back through Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Ohio and central and western Virginia and into North Carolina.
If you draw a line from Binghamton, New York to Rutland, Vermont, and anywhere north of that line or west of that line, it's been beautiful today. I mean, the blue skies, bright sun, probably a lot milder up there as opposed to what we have been dealt down here with all the clouds, all the muck with the rain and whatever. But it has been gorgeous up across central and northern New England and northern and western New York State. And now some of that gorgeous weather is finally going to filter in. It'll filter in here while many of us are asleep tonight. Probably after midnight is when the full thrust of clearing finally moves into the lower Hudson Valley, northern Jersey, New York, and Long Island. When many of you wake up tomorrow morning, you might still have a patch or two of cloud here and there, but tomorrow looks to be a beautiful day. And temperatures tomorrow, Joe, at least up here in the lower Hudson Valley where I am, 70 to 75, 71 to 76. It's going to be really, really nice to be out and about tomorrow.
Yeah, it is. I just want to. I'm pulling up on Twitter. I just want to get these right. Space specialist was the one who pointed out to me that long stretch of cool weather, and also from Space Specialist, which is at KenR0966, is his handle on Twitter. We're always watching weather systems moving from west to east, but every once in a while you get stuff moving from east to west, and that was indeed the case here. If you watch the loop here that he has up on Twitter, how the clouds backed all the way westward to west at one point to western New York and western Pennsylvania. So things normally move from west to east, but every once in a while you get a setup where they move from east to west.
And that has been plaguing us for 5 days. But as you point out, now that the catalyst of this unusual east to west motion is beginning to pull away, things are going to be getting a lot better out there. In fact, I think tomorrow, well, let's see, tomorrow I've got winds out of a light north-northwest direction, a westerly direction into tomorrow night, light and variable, and then west-northwest, picking up to maybe 5 to 15 miles per hour on Friday. That is the thing that you need to dry things out, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing over the next few days, is pushing those winds around from the ocean, from the land, and that will help set us up for some really great conditions here tomorrow and into a good part of Friday as well.
And by the way, for you folks that live in the interior mid-Atlantic and the southeast, this has been a big plus for you because of the fact that the storm sitting in that position, all this dry, cool air has been dragged all the way south down into Georgia and even into northern Florida. I mean, it's just been absolutely delightful here. I was 36 this morning, 36. And
I was 36 once.
Well, we were all 36. Now I'm not. Now I'm the reverse. I'm 63. But it's anytime you get a storm like that off the East Coast, it brings down the air, the cooler air, all the way down into the southeast, and sometimes all the way down through all of Florida. So there were big pluses to these things, depending on your location, and of course, southern New England, southeastern New England, down to coastal, the Delmarva Peninsula, and easternmost Virginia and North Carolina would beg to differ because they've been on the back edge of this storm system. But again, pulling out now because we do have a weather front that's to the west, and you'll notice this is finally also starting to move because there's a trough coming down from Canada to get all this jammed up traffic that we've had is now being allowed to move from west to east. And on the wide radar view, I will freshen this up. You're sort of dealing with the last gasp of rain here in southeastern New England and over Connecticut and Long Island. Does thou haveth the radar?
I will, or I shall. What I need is
It's there. You're good.
Oh, well, that's nice to know. All right, so let us take a radar tour. I get that RAP satellite. Not TAP. It's RAP. There you go. And we shall get a few radars. Where would you like to start off?
Well, why don't we begin with the Boston radar, because we've got thunderstorms over southeastern New England, so why don't we take a look at those?
Why don't we? We'll start off with Boston. And let me get into the share mode here, which we will do right now. And voila. And you can see that indeed, as Joe just mentioned, especially if you live on Cape Cod, these areas of yellow and especially orange and red, indicative of some probably low-topped convection, the same kind of convection that we had here in the lower Hudson Valley last night. Now, again, coming from that same east-northeast to southwest direction, and again, moving across or about to move into Cape Cod right here. I think that's where Chatham happens to be. And of course, down here we have Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, and they're also into it. Boston itself doesn't, I mean, Boston is right on the edge, right on the periphery of this zone of precipitation. And here's yet another band on the loop. Let me quickly go to New York, and we can see where that's going. Oh my goodness, that's coming right in toward New York City. Now they've gotten the Met game. The game at Citi Field is being played now after a almost 2-hour rain delay, and I hasten to say that from this view, it looks like there may be a delay again. Although the game is now official, and the Mets are leading 9-2, so this is the last game of the season. So, what sense would it make to if they have another significant rain delay to try to continue the game? But in any case, there you see the rain again coming in from that same northeast direction. Another area up here in the lower Hudson Valley, moving almost straight south-southwest, down from the northeast to south-southwest into northern New Jersey. So, Joe, we're still not done with this, and I suppose, and on my forecast on Facebook, I did mention a chance for some lingering shower activity, along with cloud cover through this evening, but it will be after midnight that the last of the showers move out, the clouds break up, and again, when you wake up tomorrow morning and open up those windows, you'll see bright sunshine, unlike the last 5 days where it's been nothing but gray and drecky conditions, if I may use that unmeteorological term.
You may. We're freewheeling here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Okay, so you've got the tight radars, and I am now going to go to the wide radar view again, and let me center it a bit so that we can. There you go, much better now. Okay, so what's going on elsewhere? Well, except for the areas along the coast from Maine down to Long Island. Their radars are silent, clear down, particularly in the mid-Atlantic and southeast and Florida. There's nothing going on all the way back west through the Gulf states and the Ohio Valley. Start to get into some showers when you headed over into Illinois and eastern Iowa, and also on the upper peninsula of Michigan and in northeastern Minnesota. We've got some showers and a couple of thunderstorms there. And out to the southwest where we have some scattered showers and thunderstorms from northwest Texas across much of New Mexico into Arizona, and also into scattered around in parts of southern Colorado. Otherwise, if you look out for most of the west and the northwest and the northern Rockies and the northern plains, it's a snooze fest on the radar. And the folks from WPC, on their 7-day rainfall forecast map, I'm going to just run through each day here, and you'll notice that this is from 8 o'clock tonight through 8 o'clock next Thursday night. Okay? So the precip that's being indicated here across New England, some of that's left over from what we have tonight. In fact, most of what you're seeing here is probably left over. This is day one. So the daytime tomorrow, this would be all dry. And you see how most of the country, except for New Mexico and parts of eastern Arizona and also in and around the Great Lakes, everybody else has little or no precip at all. Day two, from southeastern New England all the way down to Florida, all the way back through the Gulf states, nothing, and around the Great Lakes and the interior Northeast, well, pretty much we could say next to nothing in a lot of spots. Day three, again, bone dry. Day 4, bone dry. Day 5, bone dry. Day 6, bone dry. And then you start to get on day 7 a couple of hundredths being scattered around the Northeast, and then back through the Great Lakes. Then in Illinois, you're seeing that pocket there of a quarter to a half an inch. That's probably with the next cold front for later next week. And here are the totals for the next 7 days. And Joe, for the first time, and this is, you would expect this now that we're in October. We see these 7-day rainfall forecast maps sometimes, and you see large areas of 2 inches, 3 inches, and even at times 5, 10 inches, like we saw last week with the tropics. This is pretty tame here for the next 7 days for much of the country, except for the few odd spots.
Yes, for the lower Hudson Valley, for example, after we get the last of the showers out of here this evening, we're looking for, at least I'm looking for, dry conditions straight on through all the way out until next Wednesday. In fact, you want to talk about a forecast that brings you copious amounts of sunshine. I've got sun giving way to late day high clouds tomorrow, sun, maybe a few late day clouds on Friday, then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, just sunny. Talk about a stretch of dry weather. We're about to move into one.
Yep. All right, let's take care of the tropics tonight. And I have the satellite loop here of the Caribbean. And if you look in the southeast Caribbean, there's this sort of elongated system that has come in, and it's a tropical wave. Part of it is over land in South America, and that is inhibiting development to an extent. So we're probably going to have to wait for this wave to get out a little more into the open waters. That might not happen for another day or two if it stays this far south. It just sort of skims along there north of Aruba, north of Curacao, and then continues on westward. But I think once it clears all of that and gets to the central Caribbean, it is likely to develop. And I can show you here on the model plots, the hurricane model plots, all of them take it west or maybe a little bit north of due west, skimming the north coast of South America. Then it gets out into the open waters of the southwest of the southern Caribbean and on its way into Central America, and then it keeps on going west from there. As we been pointing out the last couple of days, the upper air, there's essentially a brick wall to the north. And I'll pull the upper air maps a bit later, but there's the ridge. There's going to be a very narrow east-west ridge from the Atlantic to the Gulf, and that means anything that's down here has nowhere to go from west. We do not have a weakness, at least from what I saw today. There does not seem to be any kind of weakness that develops. Nothing coming down from the north that's going to break that narrow east-west ridge in order to create an opening for the storm to exploit and say go on and turn to the northwest. I don't think that's going to happen as long as that east-west ridge is there. And as far as the intensity models were concerned, I think because of the fact that it's going to skim the coast of South America for a longer period of time, that the intensity models have kind of backed off a bit. But you still have a fair amount of them that bring this up to a Category 1 hurricane in about 4 days or so, 3 or 4 days. So I think you're going to get a name out of this for sure eventually, and then maybe you get it to move up to a Cat 1. But its proximity to South America is going to be inhibiting development. And we might as well check to see the latest tropical weather outlook, which I haven't seen because they just put out the new one. And the depression that is out west of the Cabo Verde Islands, that's moving west-northwest at 9, that's going to disappear. Forecast to become a remnant low. And they've got a 70% chance in the next 48 hours, 90% in the next 5 days, indicating that it's kind of odd, Joe, with this. And you can see it on the satellite loop. I mean, this is not a shabby-looking system here. But the pressures are actually been going down. So there's a low there. There's a broad circulation, but that interaction with the land is inhibiting its development. But you can even see on the northern edge of it, there's that feathering is starting to start. So the outflow is there. It just needs to get. It just would need to get out into the more of the open waters in order for it to begin to organize and strengthen.
And it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. It looks like it's going to be continuing, at least partially, to impinge upon the land, which in turn will help to keep the storm from really revving up, so to speak. A lot of potential there, but likely not going to get overly strong, which is good. I mean, we've had our fair share of severe storms over the last month or so, and we really don't need another Cat 3, 4, or even 5 heading in anybody's way in the days to come.
And by the way, you can see that ridge to the north in play here with these clouds moving from north to south, and then the other clouds over the Bahamas and over Cuba. Those are moving from east to west over the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. So as long as that narrow east-west ridge is there, this is going to stay down in the Caribbean Sea. So, who knows? Maybe this time tomorrow. I just want to check real quick because they actually have been sending planes in here every 6 hours. So let's see if they've got a new recon. Nope. There's no new recon there to speak of. So we can go back to the GFS here. I'll bring up the upper air. There's been some subtle changes I noticed today. I don't know how much of it to believe yet, but with this tendency for troughs to want to be in the East Coast. But here comes the next trough for the weekend. And you'll notice if I move it back, you see the upper low in the east, you see the upper low in Montana, and also the important low, which is out in the Pacific between Seattle and Hawaii in the southern part of that split. That actually is also breaking down, and the upper low in Montana now gets to move east, and that kicks our system out. The next trough brings in that cool, dry air for Saturday and Sunday, but we just got used to a stretch here where temperatures didn't make it out of the upper 40s and low 50s for a couple of days. It's much better to have sunshine and temperatures in the 50s. If you're going to be below normal, you want to do it with sunshine, and you don't want to do it with gloom and doom. So that trough is going to partially lift out, and another arm kind of lingers into Monday, and then that pulls away. And now we have another trough dropping into eastern Canada and into the eastern part of the United States late next week, and then that lifts out. And then then there's a cutoff that drops down into the southwest, which eventually gets kicked eastward, and then another arm in the long range that comes down and sort of phases with it to bring something into the east in about 12 days or so. And then yet another deep trough right behind that with a big ridge out in the west. This is a pretty amplified pattern and a lot of weather systems moving along. But I'm thinking, Joe, until we get at least through next week, it doesn't look these systems are not going to really produce much of anything as far as rainfall. So we're going to get the last 5 days back tonight. You're going to get at least 5 days of decent weather. Let's put it that way.
On the chat board, Daniel Fitzsimmons says, well, I looked at tropical tidbits, and I see a lot of warm air for the rest of October, unfortunately. Obviously, somebody who enjoys cool weather and maybe is a winter weather lover. Well, I just want to show you, Daniel, if you'll send the screen back to me, Joe, the Climate Prediction Center's forecast for risk of what they call hazardous temperatures. And in this case, all these many weeks and months when we were in the summertime, hazardous temperatures usually meant watch out for extreme heat with, 95 to 100 and heat indices of 110, 115. We're out of that now. Now we start talking about cooler or colder conditions. And indeed, on the risk here from CPC, and this does not look anything like warm air, at least for this part of October, the 14th through the 16th, and they have part of the tri-state area involved in this. This zone right over here apparently is going to be, at least forecast by CPC, between the 14th and the 16th, experiencing below normal temperatures, maybe well below normal, maybe widespread temperatures in the 30s, and maybe the first widespread outbreak of frost. And that, again, is predicted for the 14th to the 16th, which is, according to my calendar, a week from Friday is the 14th through the 16th. The 16th is a Sunday. So not this weekend, but maybe the following weekend. If and we just saw with Joe pointing out on the upper air all of these numerous troughs and upper lows passing through every so often, every few days, each one grabbing on to some of that colder air from Canada and dragging it down into the central and eastern states. Well, this apparently from the 14th to the 16th, according to the Climate Prediction Center, is going to be the one that's going to carry with it the most significant or most robust flow of unseasonably chilly air into part of the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and a portion of the Mid-Atlantic and northeastern states. So we'll keep an eye on that for you in the days to come.
Well, I have Mrs. Ann Sambles, and I went back while you were talking, Joe. I went and looked. This is Mrs. Ann Sambles' run from last night, the 0Z run from last night, and this is for this is a very a lot of times when you look at the ensembles, the further out you go, the flatter the pattern looks, and it doesn't really, because over time there's too many variables. So when you're looking at something on the ensembles at 9 days, when it shows an amplified trough, it's probably a pretty good bet that it's got the right idea. I mean, this is next. It's actually more than 9 days. It is 9 days from now, Joe. Next Friday. Look at the amplified look of this trough. And in fact, when you go forward, there's more troughing, and now we're out to almost day 14. That's a very amplified look from the ensembles. You don't, especially at day 14, you don't really see that too often on this. And I went back to last night's because every run has really kind of showed the same idea, both in that first period and in the last period. This is the latest run. Which now is 24 hours closer in time, but that's a fairly amplified look here with respect to the overall pattern here. Ridge in the west, a ridge building up into western Canada. The flow, of course, as I always say, follow the flow, and our air is going to be primarily coming from northwest Canada into the eastern part of the United States. You have a deep trough along just east of 160 degrees west. And when you have troughs out at 160, you usually have ridges at 120, and you have troughs at 80. So the long range pattern. Now look, that doesn't mean it can't get warm for a day or two, where temperatures go a little bit above normal. But if you take it out over a long period of days and average it all out, we're in a cooler than normal pattern, at least through the first half of the month, and possibly even a little bit beyond that.
Yeah, we don't, when you look at these maps that say above normal, below normal, the fact is, if you're in a zone and it shows above normal, that doesn't mean that it's going to be constantly above normal. That also could mean that the majority, 60 or 70% of the time, yeah, it'll be above normal temperature-wise, but the other 20 or 30% below normal. And in some cases, some of those periods of below normal could be rather significant, where the shots of cold air from Canada could really bring the temperatures down. So even in a case where the forecasts are for above normal, and I might point out, and so is our friend out on Long Island, Leon Probitsky, saying, yeah, CPC has us above normal, though, for the next 3 months. We'll see. Take it with a grain of salt. Well, Leon, if they say above normal, yeah, it may very well be above normal, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to have those few periods during the wintertime of cold temperatures and also possibly snowy conditions. So it's a situation where everybody will be happy, I think, before this winter is over, depending upon what you like. If you like mild temperatures or cold temperatures, everybody will get something this over the next 3 or 4 months.
Also, those CPC maps, the monthly maps, aren't updated. I don't even know what their update schedule on that, but I'll bet you that those maps are not updated more than once or twice a month. So I would I would really, if you're looking at it now, it might be a map that was. Make sure you check the dates that the maps were created, because uh, that they certainly could have changed their minds. We've seen that happen where they've done it on the 6 to 10 day and 8 to 14 day, and suddenly the pattern flips and they have to do a quick reversal of what they forecast. Joe, I don't know about you. I rarely, I stopped looking at those those long range maps because it almost seems as if they just basically run what I used to call run the tape. Okay, where they just take the forecast, the prior forecast, and just roll it. They keep rolling it over to the next period and to the next, and they don't change it until they absolutely have to. That's kind of how I. So it's like, why am I looking at this? Because if you look 9 months out, it's always above normal.
Well, Leon Pravitsky also points out that the Old Farmer's Almanac, he said, I hope the Old Farmer's Almanac is correct with their forecast in the Atlantic corridor. And I'm not really familiar or was not familiar with what they were calling for. However, I do have a copy. I don't know if the camera is on me here, but
it will be.
I do have a copy. As many of you say, well, how do you get your forecast information? Well, there you go.
Oh, good Lord.
Not only I have the library edition, Joe, and I'll tell you what the library edition means. The library edition doesn't have the little hole in the upper left corner. That hole is supposedly where you can hang it on the nail in your bathroom so that when you go into the bathroom and you need some toilet reading, and what better toilet reading than the Old Farmer's Almanac? But just to give you an idea of what Leon is referring to in the forecast for the Atlantic corridor, they are saying for this upcoming winter, everybody now quieting down to listen for this. Summary, winter temperatures will be below normal, while precipitation and snowfall will be above normal. I'm sure that warms the cockles of your heart, all of you winter weather lovers out there. Coldest periods will be in early December, early and late January, but isn't it always cold in early to late January? Anyway, and most of February. Snowiest periods will be in early to mid-January, late January, and late February. So there you go. I'm looking to see if they have anything mentioned about blizzards or heavy snowfalls. Rain and snow, snowy periods, rain and snow, turning very cold, rainy periods, sunny periods. No, I don't see. So, Leon, if you're going to hang your hat on the Old Farmer's Almanac and go for cold temperatures and snowy conditions for this upcoming winter, I wish you luck.
Look, I will just point out to everyone, I would be very, very cautious with regards to whatever you're hearing and seeing that's being posted, because the people that are posting about the fact that it's going to be a cold and snowy winter, maybe it will be. I'm not saying that it's not. Maybe it will be. But they've been forecasting that every year for the last, since I don't know when. Okay? And broken clocks are right twice a day. You know, if you set a broken clock at 12 o'clock, it's going to be right at noon, and it's going to be right at midnight, and it's going to be wrong the rest of the time. So why don't we, instead of looking at 30-day maps and 60-day maps and 90-day maps and all the other stuff that's out there, why don't we just kind of take things a little bit at a time, and what's in front of us? And what's in front of us right now is a rather cool setup for October. Now, I will tell you, in my opinion, Joe, that for winter weather lovers, I would be encouraged by what we've been seeing since autumn began, since we crossed it on the calendar. Just by the example of what the last 8 days, it's the coldest, it's the eighth coldest that stretch from September 25th to October 4th, however many days it is, 8 or 9 days. It's the coldest, the eighth coldest on record. And, I think that and the overall pattern the way it is now, if that holds, it's going to make for a very interesting November and a very interesting December. But the question is if it holds. And we're not going to know that today. What fun would it be if we knew that today? what fun would it be if we knew that the pattern was going to break down at the end of November and we were suddenly going to go to a ridge position in the eastern part of the United States? Oh my God, I said that. God forbid that that should happen. But you understand where I'm getting at here. Enjoy the adventure of figuring out the weather. For me, it's always been about the short range and maybe a week out, 10 days out. Maybe you go out a little bit more than that, but I don't want to know. This November, December, January is still too far away in my mind to have any kind of grasp of any kind of, solid reality grasp at this point.
I want to throw this out to the chat board. Let's see how many of you answer either yes or no, or the affirmative or negative.
Why don't you give me, Joe? Why don't you tell me the question? I will set it up as a poll. If it's a yes or no, we could set it up as a poll and see what the result is. So, what is the question?
The question is, if you had an infallible crystal ball, and that crystal ball will tell you exactly what is going to happen in the future for the next 365 days in your life or the lives of your family or friends, the weather situation. If you had a crystal ball that could tell you this, and it would be 100% accurate about the future, would you want to know, by looking into the crystal ball, what's going to happen to you and everybody else in the next 365 days? Or would you prefer to say, no, I don't want to know. I'll play it on a daily basis, day-by-day basis. I don't want to know if, Charlie down the block is going to drop dead a week from tomorrow. I don't want to know if it's going to snow 20 inches on February 13th or whatever. I don't want to know. I'll play it along the way I have all of my life. Or do you want the power of that magic crystal ball and know exactly and precisely what is going to transpire in the next 365 days?
And that poll is up on the chat board. You know why, Joe? Because I just put it there. So the question, since I have to keep the question to under 100 characters, if you had a crystal ball and it would tell you your future, exactly, would you want to know? So far, 26 people have voted. I literally just put it up. 27% of you said yes. Why would you want to know? Especially if you looked into the future and it told you that you were going to die tomorrow. I mean, just, or you were going to leave this earth as soon as this show went off the air, and you'd be on there on the chat board. You'd be writing, "Don't go off the air! Don't go off the air!" We're at 31%, 33% now say yes. They'd want to know. 67% say no. But the poll is just up there, so cast your votes, and we'll come back to it later. And just want to quickly say we have. If you're new to the Joe and Joe Weather Show, welcome. And if you like the show, how about hitting the like button so that Joe and I can get to 100 likes? Because we're just two happy people when we end the show and we've gotten at least 100 likes. We're at 62, so if you could take us up over 100, that would be really, really nice. So on that note, let me go back to the GFS. We'll go to the GFS surface. To take a look at what we can, at least what that model thinks is going to happen over the next 7 to 10 days or a little bit beyond that. So let's see. Nope. Oh, we're starting this nonsense again. I had this problem last night. Just a second. I already lost this window once tonight. I don't want to lose it again. Oh, okay. There you go. Now I'm going to take myself out of the screen. All right. So, notice much of the weather across the country tonight is quiet. Our storm pulls away. We are going to see nice weather in the east tomorrow. And even the next cold front, most of the energy with that goes up to the north. There's a little line of showers on Friday that moves across upstate New York and New England. So the front looks like it comes through early afternoon on Friday and it comes through dry. There's a little upper trough that swings through on Saturday. The GFS has been trying to fire up a couple of showers. I don't know if I believe about the idea of showers, but there's certainly with that upper trough could wind up being some clouds on Saturday. And that's going to also help not only hold the temperatures down, but also there will be the gradients it's not it's not completely gone. It might be just a tad breezy. And then Sunday looks good. I think Monday looks good with that high sitting in West Virginia and moving off the Mid-Atlantic coast. That kind of is the story for much of the middle of next week. And that's where we could see temperatures actually come up for a day or two, maybe next Tuesday and Wednesday. And then we have another cold front coming through next Thursday that produces some showers late Thursday night. And then another chilly high builds in from the Great Lakes to New England for Friday and Saturday. And
that's the one that the CPC is saying will bring the possibility of unusually chilly or cold temperatures. So that's the one the cold air mass will have to watch for next weekend.
Right.
Not this weekend, but next weekend.
The operational runs have kind of backed off on the magnitude of this trough for the end of next week. But again, if we go to the ensembles have a much deeper trough in the eastern part of the United States, from James Bay down to South Carolina. So the more amplified look, if it winds up being verified. And by the way, I saw this on the models. We had something like this going on, I think, back about a week or two ago, where we had an amplified trough coming for the arrival of fall. Then the models sort of lost it in the day 7 to day 10 range, and then they brought it back. So I would be careful about the operational runs, especially the European, which has suddenly decided that there is no trough at all. So I would be very cautious here because the ensembles are sort of telling a different story. I'm not a big fan of ensembles in general, but I think in this particular case here, I'm taking the hint that they may have the better idea while we see the models fluctuate between how this is all going to look in a week to 10 days. And there's no big storms on the horizon either in a pattern like this, because when you have the northwest flow, it's, as we all know, most of the time with the northwest flow, it tends to be a very dry flow. So on that note, Joe, 50 people have voted. I guess the people who haven't voted have no interest in the future at all, one way or the other. However, we're at 62% say yes. I'm sorry, 62% say no, they would not want to know, and 38% say yes.
So it's like, roughly one third will say yes, and the other 2/3 will say no. They don't want to know.
Right.
So.
Well, what would you do?
Oh, I'd say no. I wouldn't want to know. I'm one of those people who, if I knew something was going to happen in the future that was not very nice or not very good, I'd never be able to get to sleep. I'd be a nervous Nelly. So
yeah,
I prefer to take it one day at a time. One day at a time.
I'm kind of like you. I don't need to know. I don't need to know. I'll know when I get there. I don't.
Yes,
you know
exactly.
That you deal with problems when they happen. You don't deal with them until you can't deal with the problem unless you know what the problem is. I don't need to know that there's going to be a problem 5 days from now or 10 days from now, because I'm like you. The anxiety would get to me. So on that note, it is 8:23 Eastern time. We could do a little Briller Jeopardy at this stage of the game. And
I have the questions.
And you have the questions today.
Yes. I have the questions from the one and only Scott Briller. And let me get them up here. No, hang on for a second.
Rich Rothmansky kind of put it, summarized it all. He says I'll end up winning the lottery and then the next day I would get hit by a bus.
That could very well be true. Monty Hall, the late great Monty Hall from Let's Make a Deal, in an interview once, somebody asked him, "So where'd you come up with the title of your famous game show?" And he and his partner Stephan Hados and Monty Hall, they were across the street from NBC. There was a diner or a restaurant or whatever, and they were there and they had lunch. And after they had lunch, they were walking across the street back to the TV station, and Stephan Hadas says to Monty Hall, "I have a good idea for the title of a title of the game show. How about let's make a deal? And Monty Hall said, that's terrific. And he said, 1 second later, a bus came that close to running them both over in the middle of the street, or in the middle of the roadway or the freeway or whatever. So fortunately, the bus did not hit them. They got across the street. Let's make a deal was made, and the rest is history. So anyway,
Brandon Doherty has hit the super chat tip jar tonight. Yay! Thank you, Brandon. Most appreciated. He's got the dancing chicken. Is that a chicken? I think that's a chicken. On the dancing chicken emoji. So let's do Briller Jeopardy here.
The dancing. It looks like the chicken is giving us a thumbs up. All right. So here is the final tropical Briller Jeopardy of the season, ladies and gentlemen. And the question is, and this is only one question, but it does contain 5 different elements, I guess. Name the 5 Atlantic hurricanes with the fastest wind speed since 1953. The 5 Atlantic hurricanes with the fastest wind speed since 1953, and I will mention. He says the 5 Atlantic hurricanes. The Atlantic Basin also includes the Caribbean and also includes the Gulf of Mexico. So that's stretching it a little bit and giving you a few hints there for this question.
Okay, so I'm going to put my guesses on the table. So let's see if we could see what the chat board says. So I will say, I guess the 5 highest wind speeds. I guess we're talking about like what's on the what eventually wound up on the advisory. Okay, or
I would presume that's the case.
Or it was documented after it made landfall. So I would say Camille.
Believe it or not, Camille is not on the list.
I was wondering whether it would be because I think on Camille, I think they carried maybe 160. So on an advisory, or 155, I'm not sure. It's Category 5 at landfall, but it was deepening rapidly all the way up. So I don't know, if it made it, if they did it off the advisory, or if they did it off the observation. I would say,
believe it or not, Christina Pedia says Katrina, which sounds good, Matthew, Michael, Sandy, Rita, and unfortunately, 5 strikes and you're out. Rich Romanansky says Andrew. I would have said Andrew as one of the 5.
Not there.
He struck out there too.
So what about Gilbert?
Gilbert is there.
Okay.
1988, Gilbert with 185 mile per hour winds. That is number 2.
It's number
on the
2
list of 5.
So what about Hurricane Allen?
Allen is numero 1. I remember that one well. 190 mile per hour winds in 1980, and that was in the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, so that's 2 of them. So Wilma?
Wilma is number 4. 185 mile per hour winds recorded in 2005, and also noteworthy because Wilma actually knocked Al Roker down.
Right.
During a live hit.
And
the Today Show,
Alfred K. Phillips said Wilma on the chat board. So did Leon Probitsky. I'm just kind of running through these here on the chat. I have the poll up, so that squeezes my chat board down to like two people I can see at one time.
Chris O'Shaughnessy says Ivan, Irene, Hugo I would have put on my list, and Bob. Sorry about that, Chris.
No.
4 strikes and you're out.
Okay, so we're needing 2 now, right?
Correct.
All right, so we said Gilbert, Allen, and what was the other one we came up with?
Wilma.
Okay, so number 4. Number
3. Number 3 and number 5. Wilma was number 4.
Number 3.
Wilma was number 4.
I'm gonna reach back to 1955, and and because I remember reading this, but is Hurricane Janet on there?
Janet Alhouse?
I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were going to say that.
Believe me, I tell
Janet
you,
Allshouse, be nice.
Allhouse, if we had a hurricane,
she may be watching this show, you know.
Well, I'm going to say something very complicated. If we had a storm of the same power that she wielded in the newsroom over at News 12 Long Island.
Will you stop? Go. Why are you doing this? Nobody needs.
Because it would be on the top three.
I was a big fan of hers. So let's just leave it at that and let's move on. So is Janet on the list or no?
No, she's not.
Okay. Okay. Oh God. So how about Mitch?
Mitch is there. It is the number 5 storm, Monstrous Mitch, 180 mile per hour winds in 1998. That storm, by the way, was more of a cataclysmic or catastrophic cyclone for Central America. Not thankfully for the United States, but down in Central America, they really felt the effects from Mitch. Tremendous amounts of rain from Mitch.
Okay, and I'm just going to put this out there too. With the year that we had the Greek letters, Eta and Iota, whichever one was the category 5, I don't remember. One of them was. Maybe it was Eta. So is Eta there?
Eta is not there. However, Lord Kate on the chat board did get the correct one for number 3.
Which is?
Dorian.
Oh, okay. I could go for that.
In 2019, 185 mile per hour sustained winds. So they actually, Dorian, Wilma, and Gilbert on this list are tied. I guess you could say it's just a matter of subjectivity as to where you're going to put them on the rankings here. But Gilbert, Dorian, and Wilma had 185. Mitch had 180, and Alan was at the top with 190. And Alan, again, was in 1980 in the Gulf of Mexico.
See, one of the problems is when you use wind, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, as we saw with Ian, storm surge became the big part, the majority of the destruction. And I've see, in my mind, when I think about these storms in terms of being the strongest, I always look to see, I go by which one had the lowest pressure. One of the things that it doesn't tell you with regards to either the lowest pressure or the lowest wind, in terms of the actual size of the storm, in terms of how much geography did it cover, because Andrew, for example, was a category 5, but its pressure was only, I think the lowest pressure on Andrew was maybe around 920 millibars, and we've had a number of hurricanes that have had less than that.
In the 800s.
Yes. So
high 800s.
It's a little difficult to it's hard to rank. It's hard to rank. You could rank them by dollar damage. You could rank them by wind. You could rank them by pressure. You could rank them maybe if somebody could figure out like which one did the most damage to the most geography. I don't know. It's a tough call all the way around. I read an article.
Or in terms of money, how many billions of dollars in damage any particular storm caused. In which case, then you would, if it hit like a part of the United States, like a Harvey, and dumped like 30 to 40 inches of rain, you probably would get tens of billions of dollars, which would be more than, let's say, a far more potent storm that may have hit, let's say Puerto Rico or someplace in Central America or Mexico.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if you saw it today. I read an article today about how the Hurricane Center is being criticized because of the cone, the cone on the forecast.
The cone of uncertainty.
That most people don't understand it. They focus on the point versus the entire area, and they're not sure exactly. After I read through the article and the criticisms about the cone, my only comment was, whatever system you come up with, it's never going to prevent though the handful of people that will, not listen to you anyway. And it also goes to a bigger question when I was reading it, is the fact that most people don't. Most people have this when it comes to weather. They seem to expect certitude all the time, and which I find, incredibly annoying among other things. But it mostly comes from these people that are just very unforgiving. Um, they expect perfection from everybody else because they're so lacking in it in of themselves. So they're very quick to point out imperfections, um, that they find in their families, in their friends, in society. Everything is wrong, everything is bad, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if they could ever find let's call it the perfect solution. But they did make one point, and one good point is the fact that most people do get their information straight from television broadcasts, and this is not the fault of forecast the people that are doing it on the air because their time is limited. But most of the time they're focusing on where the center is going to make landfall, and maybe not emphasizing enough that okay, the center's making landfall, but there are people that are going to be north of the center, and they're going to experience certain destructive weather conditions depending on track and location, and the same goes for those to the south of a system, or to the east or to the west, again depending on where you are. And maybe that gets lost in the translation because all they really have time for when they go on the air is to just focus on the track and where the landfall is going to be. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. You don't. It needs to be stressed more that you don't have to have the damn thing pass directly over you to get the worst weather. You could actually have it pass. If you have a relatively large eye with the eye wall extending out, let's say radius of 25 or 30 miles, you could be 30 or 40 miles away from the landfall of the eye, and you could still end up with catastrophic wind situation if it's a particularly strong hurricane, like let's say a Cat 3 or Cat 4. So yeah, a lot of people don't seem to understand specifically what as you just said, Joe, the cone actually means. A lot of people look at those maps and they see the cone and they say, "Oh, look, dear, we're not in that area, that cone or whatever. So I guess we're going to miss out on the hurricane." And that certainly is not the case.
Well, the criticism was also along the lines of the fact that they see the cone, but then they see the track of the storm, and they see where the landfall is going to be, and they look at it and they say, "Oh, it's making landfall at this X point, so we don't have to worry about it because it's not making landfall. Even if we're in the cone, we're not going to get the landfall." And they were suggesting all these other graphics, and a lot of the graphics that were being suggested for the Hurricane Center to do are graphics they already have, like the probability of gale force winds and where you have the best chance of seeing gale force winds and the heavy rains and everything else. But you know what? People aren't going to look at 10 graphics when they make a decision, and I get that. But on the other hand, you can't put you can't put information that requires you to do them on separate graphics all on. You're never going to come up with that one thing that somebody can look at and say, okay, all the information is here that I need. This is the right decision for me. It's never going to happen. Right. It's just never going to happen. The chairman, Scott Briller, hitting super chat tonight. Thank you, Scott, for hitting the tip jar. He says, "Thanks, Tropical Atlantic Briller. Jeopardy is done, but there's always time for typhoons." No typhoons. Okay, no typhoons. All right. We don't know about typhoons. Don't even know too much about the storms in the history of the storms in the Eastern Pacific. So no, but definitely no typhoons. So I think we can wrap it up tonight. And we will be back tomorrow night. At what time we'll be back tomorrow night, Joe?
7:35.
And the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by
OmniTrueValue.com.
No, that's
You have the phone number. I'm only in charge of the website.
No, but yeah, I understand that, but it's brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, uh, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area, and the telephone number is 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town, especially this winter when you're going to need rock salt, and they are Long Island's largest supplier of rock salt. And as Joe said, the website is
omnitruevalue.com. Joe, we're 17 shy of 100 likes. So we have 93 people watching. If you have not liked us yet, now is the time to do it, because in a few seconds we're going to sign off. And if we're going to sign off, I'd rather sign off with 100 as opposed to 83. So hit that like button now.
Yeah. Now all of a sudden we got 107 viewers. I'm not going to sit here and wait for the 100 likes. I'm just not. Oh, by the way, you said last night that you had salmon and cabbage?
No, salmon and cauliflower.
Oh, and cauliflower. Ooh, I don't like cauliflower. Because I made my own sauerkraut. And I jarred it and fermented it and everything else, and it was really good. And I had salmon in the freezer, which I defrosted and made today. Oh my God, it was excellent. So the combination of the two were terrific. But I could swear I thought you said sauerkraut, but I'm not a cauliflower fan. It's just not my thing. Have you?
I love cauliflower, and I even had it for lunch this afternoon, the leftover cauliflower. So
no, I had asparagus.
Oh.
or asparagus.
Or asparagus. That's another way of putting it.
Nobody calls it asparagus, for God's sake.
Oh.
All right. You know what? We're not. We got to go. Good night, everybody.
Night, night, night.